Welcome, my friends, back to Beyond the Well, where forgotten histories and untold legends awaken. I never expected to find that well, hidden deep in the woods behind my house. But when I touched its sacred water, I saw more than my own reflection. I saw another world. A world shaped by light and shadow, by heroes and tyrants, by choices that still echo through time. Join me as I uncover the stories of Aldarion that lie beyond the well. Morvana, Episode 2, The Witch's Price. Delvin's Reach wasn't a large city. In truth, it was not even a town, more like a village. In fact, most people in the country of Lovok would not even recognize its name. It clung to the edge of a broken ravine, built on the bones of forgotten empires. Its stone was dark with soot, its streets narrow and hungry. The sky here was always gray, as if the clouds feared what would rise if the sun were ever allowed to fully shine. Syris had matured faster than a child should. She was now 7 years old, and those years had been brutal. Each day was a marathon to survive. It was tough for anyone to survive in this hole of existence, and even more so for Eris, who had lasted this long and fought for a child all along the way. There had been others who had taken an interest in the child, most notably an older woman, Hagris, who had often fought to get her bread. Eris never trusted this woman in the shadows of the prison, but she did get her child bread, and for that she was grateful. But she sensed something dark and foreboding about her. Yet in that dark and loathsome place, any act of kindness went a very long way indeed. Syris held her mother's hands, once warm and strong, and often held in prayer, but they were now cold and bony. Now the woman who bore her sat in the corner of their damp prison cell, eyes empty and hollow, skin drawn like parchment. Eris Koyera, once a priestess of Elion, was a relic herself now, murmuring half-formed blessings that people dismissed and gossiped about, saying that such things would never reach the heavens. Syris sat near the bars, knees pulled tight to her chest, rats scurrying past looking for any crumb of bread, but there was none. Food was a luxury the prison did not easily give, except to those who were strong enough to take it. Outside, a guard laughed, too cruel to care. "She still prays," the voice came from the cell next door. It was a man's voice, dry, cracked, worn from years of dust and madness. Syris didn't answer. "You know," he said, his voice threading between the stones like smoke, "Elion doesn't come in here. Not down in his depth. His light's too clean for the likes of us. It dies before it reaches the floor." She said nothing. The man chuckled. "But something else lives in here. Something older than light. Older than the gods." The frail woman stirred. "Be silent," she rasped. "Don't poison my daughter." But her voice cracked like dead bark. Her strength was withering, but she held firm to her faith. Her small frame was nothing more than skin and bone. The light in her eyes was still there. "Bah!" the man spit. "You and your gods. They never did a thing for you." Despite her weakened condition, Eris sat up. The light in her eyes began to burn. "You have no idea. I pity you. You'll never know. And Elion is one God, the true and great savior of Aldarion." That brought a raucous laugh from not only the man but all who heard. "You're mad, woman. Only what's coming for you is pain and suffering." She ignored them and motioned to Syris. "Come, child," followed by a racking cough. Syris was conflicted. All she'd ever known was the abuse of her mother. In one breath she wanted to defend her, But in the next, she had serious doubts about any god who would let her suffer so. In a moment, Syris turned back to the wall. She just couldn't go to somebody who was an embarrassment. And she just couldn't see where her mother's misplaced faith could be of any use. And so often Hagris had quietly put into her mind the ineffective way of her mother's beliefs. She looked now through the dim light to the other side of the stinking cell and saw the old woman eyeing her. She had noticed that Syris had, in one small motion, spurned her mother, and she gently nodded, almost reverently affirming her choice. Syris felt approval in her chest, and let the other half of her heart that desperately desired to be held by her mother go. Outside a storm was beginning. The first patter of rain against the rusted iron bars above sounded almost holy. The candlelight flickered low in the broken hovel. Rain tapped gently against the stone, as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Eris rolled over, coming off the wall, and lay on the filthy cold stone floor of the prison. Her body was thin as a bone, and her breath was like a whisper caught between worlds. The sickness had taken her voice weeks ago, but her eyes, they were still bright tonight, almost childlike in their wonder. Syris could see something different, and walked over, crouching near and looking closely at her mother. She had stopped waiting for death. It loomed too long and too often. She had long given up on the gods answering anything anyhow. Her mother's eyes looked up, but Eris wasn't looking at her daughter. Her gaze was fixed on something else, something only she could see. A soft glow crept in through the cracks of the wall. Not sunlight, not firelight, but something warmer. It wrapped round her like a memory of summer. And then he was there, Aldarion, not as the church painted him, not in grandeur or judgment, but in presence, light and wind and gentle power all at once. He did not speak in words. He didn't have to. She saw him in the trees swaying behind her eyes, in the golden grass of her childhood, in the wings of the dream that carried her through the darkest nights. He had in fact never left her, not once, even when the world turned especially cruel and her faith cracked beneath its weight. He had always remained. Syris reached out, fingers frail but steady, and light gathered at her fingertips. She smiled. "I am ready," she mouthed. And in that moment, the pain left her body, the decay, the hunger, the years of wandering, all of it fell away like dust from a cloak. Her soul rose, not upward, but inward, into that radiant presence that had waited so patiently for her to return. Syris turned. A tremor passed through her without reason. She caught only a glimpse, a strange shimmer in the air, a flicker of warmth that shouldn't have been there. Her mother's face, once gaunt and tortured, was at peace. More than peace, joy, as if she had finally found home. And then it was gone. Syris exhaled and did not inhale again. Syris rose slowly, a strange chill settling into her bones. She touched her mother's face, still warm. What did you see, Mother?" she whispered, but the room had no answer, only silence. Then she heard it, a voice, small and piercing, somewhere between the back of her mind and waking presence, but it was undeniable. "You were never alone. Enter, my child. Rest awaits you. Peace." The most surreal feeling of love washed over Syris, so powerful it brought her to her knees. "Did you hear that?" she cried. Immediately all around looked at her with suspicion and worry. "Say again, lass? Are you hearing things too?" the fat and grimy overseer said with a hard look. Syris shook her head and looked down. She fought back a tear. In the corner, Hagris watched intently and waited. She knew the girl would now follow her. There was nothing to stop her from fully embracing what she had to offer the child. There was no ceremony, no prayer, just silence. Her body was left where it lay until guards dragged it out, laughing at how little she weighed. Syris didn't cry, not because she didn't love her, but because she had no tears left. All her mother's sacred words, all the whispered promises of Elion's mercy, they had just ended in dust and filth. But when the guards left and the doors clanged shut, Hagris spoke. "She was brave, your mother, but she prayed to a god who doesn't answer." Syris turned her face towards the wall. "And you think yours will?" "I don't pray," she replied. "I listen." A long silence passed, then, "If you ever want to learn how, girl, I can teach you." The days after Eris's death folded into one another like worn parchment, gray, cold, and cruel. No one mourned her. No one marked her passing. The stones beneath Syris had stayed cold and damp with blood and the stink of forgotten lives, but her heart beat quieter now. A part of her had drifted with her mother into that strange light. The rest belonged to the darkness. And Hagris began to speak more often, though never too loudly, always in whispers. Her voice crawled under the skin, not cruel like the guards, nor sweet like a mother's lullaby, but curiosity, probing, pushing, and always there. "Your mother's prayers reached someone," Hagris said one night as they huddled near the rusted pipes for warmth. "But not the someone she thought." Syris didn't respond at first. Her mind began to close itself like stone under pressure, but still something in her stirred. "She wasn't wrong to believe," Hagris continued. "Just mistaken in where to look." That night Hagris placed a rat in front of Syris, half-starved, its bones like wire beneath fur. She drew a circle on the ground and soot and whispered words in a tongue that made Cyrus's teeth ache. "Touch it," she said. "Open yourself. Let the pain speak." Syris obeyed. Her hand trembled as she reached forward, expecting claws or teeth, but the rat stilled, eyes wide. Then something passed between them, cold and strange, like a wind inside her chest that had never been there before. She felt into the rat, around the rat, in some strange way. She became the rat. Hagris noticed and said, "Let loose all your pain and anger, all the injustice." And in an instant, Syris felt the hurt and the pain, embarrassment and suffering. It boiled in her like a vat of oil. In agony, she burst all her energy out through her finger and into the rat. It screamed in pain. It writhed and twisted, and then died. She gasped, recoiling. She looked at Hagris, who had firelight dancing in her eyes, a wide smile. "Good, yes, Syris, I knew you were a special girl." She was now bouncing back and forth on her feet. That was the first door, child." What Hagris didn't say was that although she had been taught the dark arts of connection when she was a child, she had never, even over a lifetime of devotion, been able to move into the Nexus with the speed and the power that had just come from Syris. From then on, the lessons deepened. Hagris taught her how to feel the strands of power that threaded even down into this pit. The Nexus, she said, was not the sole domain of priests and kings. It was a river that flowed beneath and above all things, light or dark. Most turned their faces from the shadow, but those who dared to drink deep could change the world. Syris learned quickly, too quickly. The hunger for meaning, the rage at being abandoned by heaven gave her power she did not know how to control nor temper. First the rats, then the birds that roosted in the cracks of the ceiling, then others. The prison was a kingdom of shadows. People disappeared all the time. Syris learned how to silence screams, how to extract pain, how to take fear and turn it into fuel. She found where there was despair and hopelessness, the shadow would thrive. and allow her to reach deep into herself, into the things around her, into the very fibers of what makes up every living thing. In time, the guards came to avoid their cell. Syris's eyes had changed, now flecked with something unnatural. Her gaze lingered too long. Her silence made men uneasy. She no longer needed Hagris's approval. She had surpassed her. And when the fire came, it wasn't a riot, it was an offering. Syris walked through the burning east wing barefoot, smoke curling like ribbons around her body. No one stopped her. Some tried, but they bled for it. She emerged from Delvin's Reach a wraith in flesh, thin, quiet, unbroken. The ashes of the prison still clung to her hair as she slipped into the world beyond. Her name had not yet reached the ears of nobles or priests, and it might not ever, but something would, for she had drunk deep out of the darkness, and the Nexus had listened. The forest roads were empty, and Syris walked with no destination in mind, only distance, a space between the prison gates and the aching emptiness in her chest. She had expected freedom to feel like something else. Instead, it felt like drifting smoke. Eventually, she stumbled into the village of Breldar, an easily forgettable hamlet on the edge of Lovak's farmlands. The people there eyed her with caution. Ragged, hollow, quiet, her face held no warmth, and her eyes, those haunted mirrors of Delvin's Reach, made the elders whisper. Still, they let her stay. She offered to work. She was strong and quiet and didn't complain, and that was enough for a time. But Syris didn't fit in. She couldn't laugh when they laughed. She didn't know how to smile without suspicion. She startled at sudden movements and flinched when hands got too close. Children avoided her. Dogs barked at her. The villagers never said anything cruel to her face, but nobody invited her in either. She had lived in a cage most of her life. Now she lived in a small hut near the outer fields, a different kind of prison, made of polite silence and soft suspicion. Then he came. Tavian, a shepherd's son, 17. A boy whose hands were calloused from rope and blade, but whose eyes still carried the light of untouched years. He didn't mock Syris. He didn't look through her. He saw her. And to be fair, Syris was very beautiful. The first time they had spoken was after she had chased a hawk away that was circling one of Tavian's lambs. He started to talk with her. Jokes, stories, little things. She barely spoke back, completely enamored by the boy. Over time, she did more than listen. She smiled, laughed, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't broken. He'd bring her food or sit by her hut. They'd watch the stars in silence, and sometimes on the wind she'd swear she heard her mother's voice again. The flicker of light she had once seen in Elion and Eris, Syris now saw again in Tavian. She loved him. She loved the idea of him, of what he offered, a new life, healing, a world where she didn't have to feel like a weapon. And for a while, he played along. He kissed her, touched her, whispered things that felt like promises. He didn't understand her darkness, not really, and she hadn't thought that would matter. She gave herself over to him completely, and when her body began to change, when her belly began to grow heavy with new life, she came to him with trembling hope. But he paled. At first he denied it. Then he begged her to keep quiet. Then panic came. His father would kill him. The village would exile him. He couldn't raise a child, not with her. She was strange, tainted. Everyone knew it. He shoved her back, called her name, said things he couldn't take back. "I made a mistake," he hissed. "It was just fun." Fun? The word broke something inside of her. She had offered him her trust, her love, her light, and he had taken it and spat it out like a spoiled wine. She didn't remember drawing on the Nexus. It came to her like breath, like instinct. Tavian staggered, clutched his head, he screamed, his eyes rolled back. She moved towards him slowly, lips trembling. You were kind," she whispered. You could have stayed kind." But his fear had poisoned everything. She touched his temple with one hand. Black tendrils of magic seeped through his skull, his mind twisted inward, memories flooding and collapsing. A fog consumed his will. She bound him in silence. Then she drew her blade. This wouldn't be quick. It would not be clean. She was going to savor every second of his misery and suffering. His exhortation of her would be paid back tenfold. She released him from her hold and stood over his quivering body. He tried to back away on elbows, his eyes wide with fear and heart pounding, the dead leaves and branches damming up as he moved backwards. "Witch!" he screamed, his voice high and raspy. "I knew it! Leave me, woman! Leave!" He pled, then turned his head and bellowed, "Help! Please, someone!" Syris smiled. There was something deeply satisfying in watching this wretch suffer. "Help me," she mimicked. "Are we having fun yet, Tavian?" She let out a wicked cackle. He rolled over and began to crawl frantically, but in an instant she leapt, arms high above her head with a knife, and it came down in a vicious strike. There was nobody to hear the screams and the pleads. It would be weeks before anyone ventured that deep into the forest. And when they did find his body, what little was left would be assumed to have been devoured by wild animals. And they, in fact, would be partly right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for coming with me beyond the well. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking, following, or subscribing. And if you have a moment, I would love a review. Your feedback truly makes a difference. If you want to dive deeper into the well, visit beyondthewell.net for show notes, transcripts, maps, character descriptions, and much, much more. And until next time, keep seeking, keep dreaming, and keep telling your story. Bye.